minutes of like however long it takes us to get through it, because we won't be asking questions.
Yeah. Welcome. This is webinar information for We Schools Elevate a Drive for folks that weren't able to attend our live chat. My name is Elizabeth.
Hi, I'm Jillian. I'm our manager of virtual programming here.
And I support our professional learning. My background is in special education. Really excited to share how to turn a tradition, elevate a tradition that might be happening in your schools. So we'll dive in. All right. Cool. So we are now supporting, again, we've introduced ourselves. We actually support all the states in blue. So we're rapidly spreading our offices in Chicago, but we support Gen US. The red is supported by our West Coast team, but we're excited to connect all these states together virtually. So please tune in to future events. We're excited to connect in this way. So 'tis the season of giving. There's a lot of different drives that happens in schools. There are food drives, book and toy drives, clothing drives, and hygiene drives. And this can sometimes be a race of like one and done, coordinate it, and teachers sometimes take on the responsibility of the coordination, the planning. And because there's so many logistics, folks sometimes don't take the opportunity to reflect with students, but there's a lot of rich learning that can happen through that pause. And we're going to kind of share both in this webinar and in the follow-up email quick ways to do that with students so that they can pause and reflect on the good work that you guys are doing together. So the essential question that's going to guide our conversation today is, how can you deepen the learning and the impact of a traditional drive? Or any service action that you do. It's kind of the season of drives. Anchored with all of our work as usual, some of you might have seen this icon before. It's aligned to our service learning theory, our 4 steps of We Schools. The first is investigate and learn, and we'll talk about how that ties into a specific drive. How do students strategically action plan and really create avenues for students to be involved in that action planning? Taking the action, and then the element of report and celebrating, and woven throughout is reflection. How are they changing? How are they impacting the community that they've chosen to serve? So this will anchor our conversation as well. Okay. So before a drive, this is really the investigate and learn, and we talk a lot about this, Jill, of where are we donating items to and why? What organizations do you trust, do you have a connection with, and you know where things are going? That's even an interesting topic to dive into with students right there, of where do we want to research, who provides food in food deserts, which pantry do we want to donate to, and again, why? Can we visit and learn and investigate and vote on who we might trust? The second element is, what are the most needed items? Oftentimes we can think that we're giving a community what they need, but it might not be what they need at all. I think this is most prevalent for food pantries. There's certain items that are needed. We've actually worked with certain food pantries where the wish lists are actually money donation because they need to supply, like pay for the building space, or more like plates or utilitarian items and napkins, and it's actually not the food that they need in that moment. So really understanding what are the wish lists of the places that you're going to. A lot of places have that set up. A really cool opportunity for students is to set up interviews with representatives at an organization and ask what are the most needed items. We'll talk about an organization later called Cradles to Crayons that our staff went on kind of a service day for, and we noticed that like boots and cold weather items were in need, and specific books for specific age groups. So we wouldn't necessarily anticipate what the needs are until you're there talking to the people that are at the facilities. And then the extra element too is, how are we ensuring high quality of items are being donated? Is it something that you would, especially for clothes, is it almost new or actually new? Is it something that you would want yourself? And the same for hygiene items, like half-used products, really that's not quite respectful. Like newer products, like having something brand new is like promotes dignity. And again, Cradles to Crayons is an organization we'll highlight a little bit later, but one of their catchphrases or slogans is quality equals dignity. Did you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's so the way that Cradles to Crayons works is that they do collect all of these new, gently used items, and we'll talk about the process, but they go through this entire process of sorting the items, figuring out what they're going to be doing with the items they can't use, and then making outfits or making outfit packs for them. So clothes that match it, clothes that are age appropriate, that are high quality, that would be exciting for a young person to receive. And then, so at the end, they have volunteers that shop for the items, and we have little shopping lists and go through. So it is a really great way of ensuring all of the items are high quality, and that starts with the drive itself. So as you're planning the drive, think about how you can inspire students to bring items that they would be excited to receive.
Mm-hmm. And one comment on the book drive too, again, like, is it age appropriate? Is it audience appropriate? Again, it can be lovely to clean out books or an old library to get books, but if they're not, if you're doing a drive for young kids who are Spanish speakers and there's no Spanish speaking books, or you're giving chapter books when it's kindergarten kiddos that really need picture books, if they're old and ripped, like, that is also not really having a sustainable impact. It's you're getting rid of stuff you don't want, but you're actually not having a deep impact on those you're serving. So really strategically thinking about, again, particularly for the food drive example, who is this food drive? Who is this book drive for? Is it for the elderly at a nursing home? Is it for families? Is it for teenagers who don't have like the higher level chapter books? Is there a diverse genre? All of those things. And then again, at this, there's an opportunity. So we were investigating, and then this element of learning can happen, ripple throughout. And sometimes the whole drive is kind of the investigate and learn, and that debrief that you have afterwards dives into a different issue that you explore with students. But it's a drive is a really cool opportunity to analyze the root causes and analyze relief efforts. So again, clothing drives, the root cause you might really dive into is homelessness, and what causes that, and what structures put people in a place where they're experiencing homelessness. What are all the different avenues and support structures to get out of it? One relief effort in colder weather areas, like we're in Chicago, is a warm weather drive, a clothing drive that doesn't tackle the root issue, but you are supporting a relief effort, and understanding that the difference between those two and how they interrelate is an interesting conversation to have with students. Diving more into the action planning, Jillian's going to share, you might have heard of SMART goals before, but we get a little more fun here and detailed. You might not have heard of Smarties goals. So
Yeah.
Over to Jill.
So like Elizabeth said, SMART goals are pretty common, but here at we use a term called Smarties goals, and we add some additional elements. And so SMART is specific, measurable, achievable, responsive, and time-bound, but we also add IES, so inclusive, equitable, and sustainable. And so a typical goal might be, I want to host a food drive, right? And that's a very open goal, but it doesn't really help us understand how it's actually going to happen, or where, or why. And so we work with students when we do goals with our youth council, and it really helps us add a lot of structure around our goals to make them achievable. And so when we think about specifics, the S, that's the 5 W's. So who are we serving? Where is this drive going to happen? Why are we doing this? Why are we supporting this particular organization? All of those questions: who, what, when, where, why, and putting a lot of structure around how it's going to happen. M is measurable, so how are you going to measure if it's successful? What does success look like qualitatively and quantitatively? So if it's a book drive, how many books per student are you hoping are collected? So maybe it's 3 books per student. What does success look like qualitatively? Maybe you're going to challenge each student to bring 3 books, but you want each book to have a different type of protagonist. So maybe you want there to be female representation as protagonists, or maybe you want there to be different racial or ethnic representations in the protagonists that you choose in the books. And you can take that a step further by learning about the importance of that. So what does success look like qualitatively and quantitatively? Achievable is this achievable? Oftentimes young people especially are very ambitious, and that is amazing, but making sure that what you're doing is achievable. And so that is really dependent on the students that are going to be participating in the drive, and what's possible for your group of students. Responsive, how are you being responsive to the needs of the organization that you're serving? So like Elizabeth said, oftentimes organizations publish a wish list of all of the things that they need. How can you respond to that? So one example that I give is when I was in school, we did a food drive, and each element of each different thing that you could donate was worth a different amount of points, depending on how much it was needed. So our local food shelter needed a lot of peanut butter, and so peanut butter was worth 10 points, whereas a can of green beans was worth 5 points. And so there was a competition between homerooms in our school about who could collect the most number of points, and that was a way that we were being responsive to the needs of our local food pantry. Tea is time bound, so when is it going to happen? What are the milestones that you're going to do to track making sure it happens on time? And I is inclusive, and so how are you being inclusive of the people that you're serving and also within your group? How are you including all voices in the planning conversation within your group? And how are you being inclusive of all of the different types of people that you're serving with your drive? So that might be that if you're doing coats, you want to make sure that you have coats for all ages or gloves for all ages, and you can do that depending on what your drive looks like. Equitable is a little bit similar, but it's how are we ensuring equity within our group for decision making, and how are we equitably serving our stakeholders. And sustainable is how are we making sure that our drive is sustainable before, during, and after. So before the drive, if we need supplies, can we think about the types of supplies that we are gathering, making sure that they're maybe recyclable? During the drive, how are we making this sustainable? And that could mean a range of different things. And after, if there are items that aren't quality, what are we doing with those items? How are we disposing of things that we've used? So if you have extra boxes, what are you doing with them? How can you reuse them? Things like that. So going through each of these has really helped our youth council put a lot of structure around their planning. So yeah, we hope that you can use the same thing. And after the webinar, we'll be sending out a Smarties worksheet for you and your students to use.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thanks, Jill. I think time also aligns to like time in the year too. We'll dive into an example about that, but many people give around this time of year, again, particularly for the food drive example, but oftentimes that food runs out around February. So students have been rethinking about how do we make that part of a spring tradition so that we support food banks into the summer months when giving isn't as widespread. So there's a lot of different angles for this, and again, this is for students to use students to guide this so that it's not all on you as the adult planning it and investing the kids in participating in it. When they're part of these decisions, they rally each other. So going to our specific example, so during the drive, taking action, we're highlighting one of our partners. Cradles to Crayons is in Chicago, but it's also around the US as well. So you can check out their website to see if there's a space near you or another organization that's similar. But we were really impressed with the quality of the experience and their approach to service. We did this as a staff, and it's one of our highlighted partners, as I said. So the first step, and again, their slogan is quality equals dignity. You arrive and there's a little bit of an info session on how they're who's requesting items, how they gather items as well. While you're waiting for that intro, you make every item and package that's donated gets a little kind of love note. So you can see our staff right here is like coloring or writing their own kind of love notes for these donations. It's a huge warehouse, and they only have about 10 full-time staff. The rest is powered by volunteers. So it's a really cool opportunity where they get the donations, they sort them. There's a cleaning station. There's a packaging of if folks have gotten hats and gloves, and they put little outfits together. Our team was part of the shopping station where we actually got like a profile of a student. So a social worker will request items for, and again, Jillian needs a hat, books, boots, coat, and then what was the other thing? There might be one other item that they
Hygiene
need.
kit.
A hygiene kit. There are like diapers for newborns and all that thing. So you'll get the age of the student, the name, and all these items that you need. So you can go around and package and make sure that like, oh, the hat goes with the coat. What boots look the nicest? What books might be appropriate? And you package all that up. And you kind of, it's like the relay race. You try to bundle as much as possible. Typically within an hour, a group of 20 will do about 70. We were about 6, so we did closer to 40. But you serve for about an hour, and then you reconvene. And because different people are at different stations, they share how many kids you impacted in just that hour. It's a really cool for any age group. And they scaffold it to different age groups too. I think older kids do the shopping versus an older demographic does the shopping versus like the cleaning and the sorting younger kids do. So we were actually there with a group of elementary school students. Second grade, I believe, was the age group. So it's a really cool variety, and I think that there's learning woven into the taking action itself, and then you as an educator can even debrief further with students. So great partnership. And we'll highlight others in our email of what schools are doing. Other examples of take action, if you're in the Kentucky area, part of their We Day Kentucky is doing a hygiene drive for school, for students. So the learning linked with that is really analyzing like, how does your hygiene affect your learning? What are your hygiene habits? Well, how does like, brushing your teeth, having clean clothes all affect your attention, your self-esteem, and everything else? So you can dive into different parts depending on what your drive, how your drive is designed and who it's for. So leading into that reflection piece after a drive, reporting and celebrating for the impact. Again, we've had folks that have had a tradition of doing a food drive, and they made a video reporting their impact and realized that food's going to run out in February, so they want to create a spring tradition. Reflection, we often say in our office, serving without reflecting is like eating without digesting. This really is where the magic happens, where students start to own this process and guide it them. It's how you get from a teacher-led to a student-led experience. And it can sometimes be a challenge to do because of time, but there are ways that you can front load it so that it's still not excluded. One of the debriefing styles that we use with students who go to camp is ORID. So that first step is observation. What did you see? Who did we impact? What did you not see? Really observations of tell us what happened during the experience. Think about what happened. And again, if people are doing different parts of the drive or at different, like in our case, we were at different stations, that reporting out is really important for folks to understand the full picture of the experience. And then the reflection. How did you feel? What did you see? What does this make you think of? Like getting them to start having that reflection of like folks that have done book drives in the past, and they couldn't accept at Bernie's Books, they couldn't they couldn't receive the Spanish speaking books because, and they actually were sorting through a lot of the books, and many of the books donated weren't acceptable to receive. That opened up a lot of questions for students of what happens with those books. Why were those books not aligned with the needs? And that opened up a really great conversation. I is interpretive. There's a little bit of a typo there, but why are we doing this? Why did we pick this spot? How does this impact learning? So those deeper questions. So kind of moving from me to the we as society. And then D, decision, what's next? So for our team, we want to be volunteering at Cradles to Crayons more often because it was such an easy, accessible thing. We want to connect that with our youth council and be more involved in that organization because it was so accessible and fun. But how might the what's next could change? How do I interact with that organization? How do I change my behavior? And all of those things. So kind of observe, reflect, interpretive, and decision. A quick way to do it on the bus ride home, if you go somewhere or as a homework assignment, you can assign different questions to different colored note cards. And they can take as many as they want, or they can pick. It can mean something like, what was I most inspired by? What was I surprised to learn? I am motivated to do. So that's more of the decision, what's next? My hope for my city or the community is. Again, that's kind of the decision, what's next? They can pick the color, and you can have them come back the next day and debrief with the same color, different color. It's a nice opportunity for the secondary processors to record down their thoughts before they dive into sharing. One drink. So after listening to this webinar, you can pause to kind of think about what organizations have you worked in the past, and how can you increase, or how do you already increase, intention before the action and reflection after the acts of service. Aligned with our We Schools resources, kind of a food drive aligns with We Scare Hunger, doing a clothing drive aligns with We Volunteer Now, and a hygiene drive aligns with We Give Health. All of our campaigns are online. If you go to we.org/whatever campaign it is, you can go to a sign up page. So this lets your program manager know that you are interested or have done this type of action. And then we have lesson plan packets for each that kind of help through those 4-step process, that help with the investigate and learn, or help with the reflection piece. You can download there as well. I don't want to say it's a little bit hidden, but it is a little bit hidden. So look for the sign up and the download blue buttons. And then there's other stories of impact and a lot of cool things to dig through as well. Do you want to add anything to that part, Jill?
Yeah, I would encourage you right now just to go on one of those pages and sign up for the campaign. That lets, like Elizabeth said, lets your program manager know you're interested, and also your program manager can send you additional resources or ideas for each of these campaigns. So you can pause the video, sign up for the campaign that speaks most to your next drive, and then we can reach out to you afterwards.
So it's we.org/whatever campaign it is. So We Scare Hunger, We Volunteer Now, We Give Help. Our program managers also love emails. So when you have, whether you're planning it or you've already done it, like send pictures and impact, like us knowing what you've done gives us an opportunity to help elevate your story. There's a couple of different ways we can share what you're doing via newsletters, via the website with the We Stories section, or on the We Day stage. But your real life examples really inspire others. So send us the details because we want them. And these are some of your program manager spaces. Again, can go sign up for the campaign. You can reach out to your program manager, Dave, Jill, who's with us, Emmy, and Michael, and then Shira as well if you're in the Baltimore area, to set up time. Again, if you need more support with planning, or if you just want to update on progress. And then if you can also take a moment, we're expanding what we're doing virtually out of Chicago. So I'll put this in the follow-up email as well, but share your feedback of what would you like more of. We have an upcoming session on Every Little Bit Counts, about global giving and connecting with our We Villages work and coin drives. We have in the past done art as activism and the science of gratitude. So please share what topics you'd want to discuss, and then tune into the virtual sessions, because it's really rich when we can have educators from across the nation share. Yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Happy almost Thanksgiving.